Hey guys, and welcome back to Under the Skin, the Tattoo Podcast. I'm Ricardo, and today I'm talking with somebody that is tattooing since the early 90s. He runs the Hope Gallery in the US, and his style is something very particular. He is the master of pin-up tattoos, Joe Capobianco. I remember as soon as I started working with colors, you were one of the tattooists that they showed to me and say, here, have a look at this guy. And it blew my mind. It's amazing to be talking to you, man. Thanks a lot.
Well, I do really appreciate that. I got into the business at a fortunate time based off the fact that there wasn't a lot of people doing what I was doing back then. It's a matter of getting to know people and making new friends, meeting newer, younger tattooers, like people that are just getting into the industry. I do try to keep an open thoughts on meeting new people and people who email me or direct message me through Instagram. I prefer people to come directly to the shop, but obviously in today's day and age with the amount of tattooers all over the world, that's not going to happen. But there's no better communication than meeting somebody directly.
I would have loved to go to the US. I was planning going this year, but with Trump,
Well, I was supposed to be in Italy this past weekend for Alex DePasse's The Icons and Prodigies show was this past week. And when looking into tickets, everything is so freaking expensive right now. And then you add what's happening with immigration and the United States and how insane things are right now. I'm in no rush to leave the United States. Like it's just too much to worry about between other countries maybe treating us poorly or having problems coming back into this country. Like there's too much bullshit right now, politics wise, and I don't want anything to do with it.
let's dig in. I would like to know, you starting tattooing in the early 90s?
Yes, I started tattooing in February of 1993, Long Island, New York.
And you have this very particular tattoo style. Everybody knows you from the pinups. What was like the influences that you
So
had?
my first year of tattooing was in a street shop, and we pretty much did everything, like from black and gray to little tiny color pieces to traditional panthers. If it was on the wall, we tattooed it, and the majority of the stuff we did was on the wall. And that was about a solid year and a half of that. I've always been a huge fan of pinup. There's an artist named Olivia here in the United States who's more of a contemporary pinup artist, but I was always a big fan of like George Petty, Gil Elvgren, Alberto Vargas, all those artists. In high school, I used to airbrush, or I started airbrushing in high school, probably 1984, 85. I started airbrushing t-shirts and jackets and stuff like that. I did that as a living probably until a year after I started tattooing. Because my first year tattooing, obviously, between apprenticing and whatnot, it was hard for me to make any kind of real living. So I was still airbrushing. I just kind of took the mentality of how you airbrush, which is
Okay.
basically just super solid, smooth shades. And that's how I knew how to paint. That's how I knew how to produce color art. Was that's just the way it was done. Back in the day, I used to copy anything. You know what I mean? Like from the flash on the walls to traditional old school pinup to the pinups of like Esquire magazine and stuff like that. A year and a half into tattooing, I got asked to do my first pinup because I had a portfolio of paintings that I had done of pinups. And I got asked to do my first pinup. It was a Betty Page sitting on a jukebox on a chess panel on a friend. And I did that. It got published 3, 4 months later. And once that magazine came out, I had 4 pictures in a magazine and it fucking blew up. I went from doing flash strictly off the walls to people coming in and wanting to get more custom drawings from me. And even back after my first year of tattooing, if somebody came into the shop and picked something off the wall, we would just take the line drawing or take the flash off the wall and redraw it anyways,
Okay.
whether it be redrawing the actual piece or if it was just a loose tracing. So even though you were doing something off the wall, you were still doing it where it had your hand strokes, your flair,
Mhm.
like the way you lined stuff, where you bolded stuff out.
Giving your
You know,
personality.
we Exactly. So even though we were copying stuff off the wall, we were still trying to add a little something of ourselves to it. And that really kind of helped develop more of a traditional tattoo style. So a lot of the stuff that I did was still rooted in tattooing. It was shaded the way it was outlined. I'm not doing any details entirely too small because they're not going to hold up well, whatever. A lot of the things that are forgotten nowadays because now it's just about reproduction, not necessarily about making a great tattoo.
No, nowadays I see, and I try to preach here when I'm teaching. is that people forget that the tattoo is something that should look amazing in 10 years from now, in 15 years from now, and not just
Exactly.
for the Instagram picture. The filtered
Right.
Instagram picture looks amazing now, and 6 weeks from now looks already old as hell.
But I think what we're seeing is the clients have been, in my opinion, as a tattooer, your job is to educate the client as they walk in and explain to them how things should be done. And I know this is something that most people don't want to hear nowadays because everybody feels they're an artist and that they want to produce what they produce, and that's that. And I get that, I understand that, but to me, it should be more about creating a great tattoo and it's something that's going to last for 20 to 30 years. Where a lot of the tattooers nowadays, the tattoo artists, their job is to create something that's going to look great for 5 years. It looks great for 10 years.
Mm.
And I'm not shitting on the new age of tattoo artists, but I think that clients should be made aware, and some of them are, I think, should be made aware that the tattoos that they're getting, that they're collecting, are going to look good for maybe 5 or 10 years, and then they're going to have to be redone. And the problem is, a lot of those tattoo artists are not going to be there to redo the work that they did 5, 10 years earlier.
Exactly.
And that's shortchanging the client.
I think that it's missing this commitment with tattooing. A lot of people, they don't have this ride or die feeling. I want to be a tattooist and this is the thing that I want to do and this is my focus, my life. I think
I,
nowadays
I
it's all
think
about money.
I think it's a combination of money, but I think it's more ego. I think that tattoo artists, like even with me, like in the beginning, like when I first started tattooing, like my first week tattooing, I thought I was going to be a great artist, a great tattooer. I'm like, oh, I'm a good artist. I'm better than most of these people in the shop. I can draw, I can paint, I can do all this stuff. It wasn't until my second week of apprenticeship that I met Paul Booth. And I saw that Paul was a fucking artist as a tattooer. And I went, oh, wow, this guy's a fucking artist. And he fucking tattoos like crazy. And he draws all this nutty shit on the skin. That's legit. He's not creating just his art. He's creating his art as a great tattoo. And that was probably the most sobering thing to happen. And you immediately have a greater appreciation for tattooing at that point because now you're looking at stuff from the standpoint of like, yeah, dude, this isn't about my ego. This isn't about my art that may only last 6 months, a year, 2 years. This is about getting a good tattoo that someone's going to look at in 10, 20, 30 years and go, oh, that's a Joe Capobianco tattoo. That's more important to me, that a tattoo remains solid and recognizable for the life of the person, for the most part.
There is a lot of artists starting tattooing and they want to do art on the skin. They don't understand this aspect of what works on a canvas or on a paper doesn't necessarily work on the skin. So you need to adapt. You're going to need to
Exactly.
adapt on the skin. Being an artist doesn't mean that you're going to be a tattoo artist.
Many years ago, we were at an event called the Paradise Gathering. It was up in Massachusetts. I was one of the guest speakers. There was a bunch of California guys like Big Gus, Mike DeVries, Nico, a bunch of big names. And these guys were just starting to make big names for themselves. One of the complaints they had about me as a tattooer was that my tattooing wasn't recognizable. Like my paintings look different than my tattoos. And my response was, yeah, they do, because my paintings are my paintings, my tattooing is my tattooing. The basic overall feel of the drawing is there, but when I paint on paper, it's meant to last different than it does on skin. And that was one of the things nobody can get over. It's like, oh, if you tattooed exactly how you painted, your stuff would be amazing. And I'm like, yeah, I'm good with that. I would rather my tattoos look like a tattoo in 20, 30 years than a pile of shit in 5 or 6.
I think it was in one of the podcasts from you that I heard about putting yellows and like 5 tones of yellow to do like a fire or something like this. This is not going to stay. I have yellow on my skin and I know this tattoo is like, I don't know, 20 years old and the yellow is almost gone simply because of my skin type. So that
Yes.
you talk about,
Well,
like simplifying.
yeah. I mean, if you look at what we're seeing now, mainly through social media, even with some of the magazines, you're not seeing true representations of these tattoos. You're seeing filtered, you're seeing polarized, you're seeing things that have been fooled around with in Photoshop. You're not seeing the true tattoo. You're seeing what the tattoo artist wants you to see. But the
Yep.
problem being is, and this isn't the case with everything. I'm not saying that everybody is doing this. Not all those tattoos don't look amazing on the skin. But when you're looking at something with no black outlines, almost no real black, and it's just yellows, oranges, reds, and there's one piece that pops into my mind, is that giant dragon, this fire dragon on somebody. And you look at it, you're like, I want to see this in person. I can't trust this based off the photo, but you know for a fact that that guy has made a career off of that one piece. And it's one of those situations where it's kind of a cheat. It's not real. And it's also creating false expectations for our clients that think, oh, well, that's just the way the tattoo should look. And when it ages poorly, are they also convinced that that's the way a tattoo ages? Because we both know that's not the case. You know, so there's a big issue. I have a big issue with something like that. A couple of years ago, I judged at the Brooklyn Tattoo Convention here in the States. One of the artists, I believe she's an Italian artist, and it was a full back piece, beautiful. And one of the things I always ask is, how old is that tattoo? I was genuinely impressed to find out, I believe the tattoo is 4 years old, and it looked tremendous. And for the life of me, I wish I could remember her name. It looked tremendous. And that took best of, it wasn't best of show because it was someone that traveled with them, but it took best back piece, and it was a gorgeous tattoo. But that's something I always ask. It's like, you know, when you see a tattoo that's healed and it looks kind of funky, or it looks like it might have looked really amazing at one point, and then you ask how old the tattoo is, and the first thing they say is, oh, it's 6 months old.
Yeah.
And you go, 6 months? That tattoo looks like it's 7 years old.
Exactly. Now, I have heard people talking about and complaining about the whole pigments and all, but people don't know the difference from diameters, the difference from needles. It's an amazing artist, but they don't know the techniques. So they don't know the instruments. And I'm convinced that this is not about the pigments that you're using. This is simply about the way that you're applying the tattoo.
Exactly. It's also a situation like individuals that have never used a coil machine, never used a needle on the bar, don't know the differences between how fast the needle is going into the skin, how long it spends in the skin, how much drag is created by that needle because it's not going in and out of the skin fast enough. They don't realize the trauma that a rotary machine can do over a coil machine. The idea that you've got artists now that when they're lining stuff, they're not starting here and ending here. They're going in and out of the skin, in and out of the skin. And they don't realize that exactly. First year, that line will look probably solid and may look consistent. But as that tattoo ages, and every time you dip back into the skin over the initial tattoo, you're creating more trauma. It's going to spread unequally, and you're going to end up with this blotted line, or this line that's falling out, or any number of things. And I'm not even sure if any of these artists are going to be around to see their stuff. I think that they're looking at it from the perspective of, I'm done with you. I don't need to look at that again. You know what I mean? So I think that's part of the problem, is like with this plug and play machines, where they're not learning all that they need to know for the long term of their future, not for the immediate time of making a name for themselves. I think they're giving themselves and their clients a huge disservice by not looking into that, by not discovering more about that.
You use a rotary. You don't work with the coil anymore.
I go back and forth. So for back in 2000, I think it was 2009, I started using rotaries. I was using rotaries for mainly shading and color, and then coils for lining, because I still don't like lining with rotaries. But now I'd say 75% is rotary, and then every now and again I still use coils. Like yesterday, I tattooed all day coils. A lot of times I'll use coils to line, rotaries to shade.
Why do you prefer the coils for the lining and the rotaries to shade?
I think it's the subtlety of the spring. One of the rotaries that I use for lining it's from Electric Ink. It's called the Transverse. The Transverse tank is probably the best liner that I have ever used for needles on the bar. And when I say that, it is as close to a coil machine that I've ever used for a rotary. Now, I've only used a Dan Cuban machine, twice, and I didn't like them. I think that they're very expensive. I think they're very heavy, and they're fucking hammers. The Transverse tank has just enough give to give you the play of a 4mm stroke that goes in and out of the skin super smooth, and doesn't have the trauma that you'll get with like a pen or certain other rotary machines. So I'll still line with that probably 80% of the time. I go back and forth. And the coil machines, to be honest with you, there's a bit of romanticizing about using them, where the machines, they all have a deep meaning for me. where rotary machines is just a tool. To me,
Mm.
a rotary machine is a tool. It's nothing more than that. It can be replaced tomorrow, no problem. Oh, and with a coil, it's one of those things where everything's got a memory. Oh, I got this in Texas from, Seth Safari, or this one is from Aaron Kane. I bought this in the Richmond Atlanta convention back in the early 2000s. There's always a story behind most of the coil machines that I use. And it's nice, I still have my first Mickey Sharps and Mickey B's machines that I got in the early 90s. Matter of fact, I just used my Mickey B's machines that I
Okay.
picked up in 93. I
Whoa.
just used them the other day. It was one of those things where it brings back all these memories. The second you put it in your hand, you drop that needle and you just drag that line. You're like, yeah, why did I ever give this up?
With the coils, you have way more feedback because you have the needles on the bars and you
Yep,
have the amateur bar that is going to move. If you go way too deep, it starts to moving different, starts sounding different. I think nowadays, everybody that starts tattooing, they jump, not even for a rotary. With the bar needles, they go straight for the cartridge. And the cartridge, then you
exactly.
lose completely the feeling. Do you
I
use
think
cartridge at
that's,
all?
I use cartridges because I still use the pen machines. I use Electric Inks Ultra Pen, a great machine. It's got an adjustable give on. It's a 4 millimeter stroke. I can line with them. If I'm doing small little tattoos, a lot of times I line with the pen and cartridges. I still shade with cartridges and color with cartridges and the pen machine because of the convenience. It's strictly laziness on my part because I do enjoy using a coil machine for shading and color, but I've gotten used to setting up 2 or 3 shaders, two or
Mm,
three liners. So a lot of times I'll set 2 or 3 liners up, but sometimes if I've set up only 2 coil machines, now I'll go, oh, I could really use a 17 mag. I'll grab the pen, put a 17 mag, and just work with that. So a lot of times it's more out of laziness. It's not so
mm.
much that I think the cartridges are better. It's more out of convenience and laziness on my part.
Let's go back here to when you started. You telling me about how you use the machine, the feeling that you have about these machines, and all. Of course, this comes with years and years of experience. But how was at the beginning? Did you have somebody that actually
My
inspired you?
I was asked to get into tattooing in the early, like 91. I was asked, and I turned it down for almost 2 years because I didn't want to tattoo. And I ended up getting asked one more time, and I said, you know what? It's a different artist medium. I think I'm going to do it. Now, I didn't like the guy who was asking me. He
Okay.
did my second tattoo. Very like he's somebody who's kind of well known in the United States. Not a great tattooer, just owns a couple of shops, has a big collection of old flash and machines and whatever. But he's a wannabe tough guy, wannabe biker guy, like just bullshit artist. And everything was respect and bullshit, and he didn't really know anything. His idea of teaching me how to use machines was adjusting rubber bands, maybe bending my needles, filing the contact point, like bullshit, like advice. The very first time I built a machine was with somebody else in the shop, not with him. Like he knew nothing about machines. My apprenticeship lasted 1 month. It
Oh,
was 2 weeks of drawing flash, cleaning needles, scrubbing tubes, just general shop stuff, and then 2 weeks of free tattoos. I did 13 free tattoos.
oh,
And then I was like, I came into work one day. He goes, okay, here's a tattoo, $60. And I'm like, for money? And he's like, yeah, for money. I'm like, okay. And the next day I was a regular tattooer, 4 weeks. My apprenticeship
okay.
lasted. So my apprenticeship was bullshit. Everything I learned how to do, build machines. Like I only made a handful of needles. My girlfriend at the time, who became my wife, she taught me how to make needles, not the guy who apprenticed.
Okay.
We used to buy all of our needles. When I learned how to make tattoo pigment, it was Corey Kruger and myself calling all of our friends and making our own little formula and making our own tattoo pigments. You know, creating flash, drawing flash. Instead of watercolor, we did everything with colored pencils because that's what I knew. And me and my friends would get together and you draw flash. Nothing was done in my apprenticeship. My apprenticeship was basically that's an autoclave. These need to be scrubbed. We used to reuse our needles. Reused our needles for 3 or 4 years in the beginning. We'd scrub all of our needles. I didn't start, dude, it's crazy. I didn't start eye looping needles. Like we would use a needle,
Uh-huh.
it would go in a bath, and then at the end of the night, we'd scrub all of our needles and then package them. About 3 months in, 4 months in, I'm tattooing, and I can't put this line in the skin. I tattoo, I wipe, there's no line. I'm like, what the fuck? What is wrong with this? I talked to my friend, one of the guys I work with, and he goes, did you eye loop your needle? I'm like, eye loop? What's an eye loop? He rolls his eyes. He goes into his cabinet. He hands me the eye loop, and he goes, "That's an eye loop. Pull the needle out and look at it under the thing." I pull the needle out. I look at it, and it's like this. It is
Whoa.
just a mess. And I'm like, "Oh my god, what the fuck?" He's like, "Tonight, when you scrub needles, I want you to pull them all aside, sterilize them all, and then go through them." The next day, the owner comes in the shop, and I've got two piles of needles. Good needles on this side, bad needles on this side. There's like this much good needles, and then the rest is all shitty needles. I'm like, what the fuck? And he had no idea. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, dude, have you seen these needles? They're all fucking hooked. They're a mess. That's how I discovered that you need to know what your tools are. I still have the eye loop that he gets in my cabinet right over here. I still have the original eye loop that I got in 1993 from Tom Butler at Cliff's Tattoo on Long Island.
Crazy.
It's one of those things. It's something I'll never forget because it changed everything about the game. Because the more you're involved in mixing pigment and why the pigments do what they do, why certain colors last longer from different companies, is because I mix the pigments. I'm not going to say I know what's going on nowadays because it's
Mm.
beyond me now. But you know why certain pigments are going to hold up better in the skin, why certain blacks held up better in the skin than other blacks, why black and gray guys on the West Coast used to use Pelican ink because it was so much smoother under the skin, while certain artists use Sumi ink because of the consistency in the skin as well as how it ages and what it turns into. So there's things like that I think that if you don't take the time to learn how to build machines, learn about needles, learn about pigment, that you kind of miss out on the little nuances of things that
Yeah.
can make a better career for you. Well,
I
that was
also
a rant.
I think like nowadays the young tattooists they also don't have the patience, you know. Everything needs to be for yesterday. You stay there even this 1 month apprenticeship without getting paid, and then you got your first tattoo, your first $60. I have people here that they knock on the door and ask to, oh, can I learn how to tattoo? Look, you're gonna learn first to clean the machine, to set up the machine and all of that. They goes like, yeah, okay, but when I'm gonna tattoo, when I'm gonna make money, not now, not in the near
Exactly.
future. You
Exactly.
know,
Well, that's the thing. I think that's the problem we're dealing with a lot of what's happening in the business now. I think that it's kind of the short, and this is from somebody who, like I said, I had to learn things on my own. If I were somebody else, I wouldn't know these things. If I were somebody else, I would just be happy with making money and not care about purchasing different machines and why certain builders make a better machine than other builders, why there's a difference between a brass machine and an aluminum machine and an iron machine. You know, like there's so many different little nuances of things that I think that it's not a bad thing to know all these things. I think now more people are, they're more about being artists than they are about being tattooers, which is something we talked about earlier. But I think that, when you do both and you combine those two, then you're just going to be a better tattoo artist. You know what I mean? And that's something that I think is, I don't want to say it's lacking because there's tons of them out there. And then there's just the raw talent of individuals that are out there that have the drive to just do really great art and tattooing without knowing anything. You know what I mean? So I guess a lot of the things I say can be contradicted because it all comes down to the individuals.
you definitely need to have a lot of resilience to be a tattooist nowadays, even more because you have a lot of competition. Very young people that are very talented, they pick up things really quick. And the ones that are really looking forward to learn, they eat up all the books. They are really interested. I give all the material and they always ask for more and more. And these are the ones I see them tattooing and I find it amazing. I'm really proud to see how they developed. But of course, they need to want. We cannot take their hands and say, okay, come here, I'm going to do for you.
Well, that's the problem that when you do a school, you run into those issues because it comes down to people paying money and then that's it. And it doesn't matter after that. And I think it's the individual drive. That's why I think the apprenticeships are more important because If you're willing to do all of that, you're willing to go to those ends, then of course you're going to make a better tattooer. You know what I mean? You may not be the greatest tattoo artist, but when you have more of a drive to really learn things without having everything spoon fed to you, that's the
Mhm.
difference between a great tattooer and just someone who tattoos.
What would you say to people that are starting tattooing now? Like things that they definitely need to understand even before they start entering in a tattoo school or in a studio and saying, hey, I want to learn, I want to be apprentice.
I think that knowing the person that is going to be teaching you, you know what I mean? Like that's something that I think it's taken for granted because people just call shops and say, "Hey, are you apprenticing?" I'm like, dude,
Mm,
you don't even know me. Like I could fucking be the biggest asshole in the fucking world. No, we're not taking apprenticeship. I think that knowing where you're going, if you're going to a school, then know what the history of that school is. Know full well that a lot of tattooers like myself are going to be hesitant to hire somebody who comes out of a tattoo school versus somebody who did a couple of years working with one person and maybe had an apprenticeship that lasted 6 months or a year. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of things like that that you really need to look into and do your homework with. And then from there, I don't think you have to be a great artist to be a good tattooer. You know what I mean? But you have to have a great knowledge of what's around you. You have to know what the different styles are, what the different needle groupings are that you're going to use for those styles. You know what I mean? So you have to have an idea of like the direction you want to take it in. Then you have to be resilient enough to do everything. Because
mm,
if you're going into this thinking all you're going to do is color realism this big, or you're doing black and gray, just, little line work or dot work, or I'm just going to do blackout work, you know what I mean? Then you're cutting yourself short. Not to mention the fact you're pigeonholing yourself in a way that is going to affect the rest of your career because we see trends changing. All this little tiny line work that people are doing now, in another 6 years, these tattoos aren't going to look great. And
mm,
I don't mean that they're all going to look bad. Like some of them, I'm sure, are going to hold up because depending on people's skin, the person who tattooed them, any number of things. But the majority of the people that are doing all that work should not be doing it. They're incapable of it. They're only doing it because it's a trend. And if that's all you know, you're fucked when the
mm.
person comes back and says, I want to cover this up. And you're incapable because you know nothing about using big mags, heavier line weight, or just being able to draw without tracing something. There's any number of reasons you're cutting yourself short, you know?
Yeah.
So knowing full well that you have to be versatile, you know?
The thing about being versatile, if you go on Instagram, you see the feeds there from the so-called artists that it's only one style. Then everybody that is starting looks and say, oh, okay, I also want to do my own style, or I want to do this style, and the rest is bullshit. Why do I need to learn shading when actually
Right.
all that I do is fine line tattoos? And then somebody comes tomorrow and asks for something else. You're either going to do a shitty job or you're going to give somebody else. If you give somebody else, great, you're doing the right thing. If you take it and do a shitty job, yeah, you're fucking up somebody's skin. That's not cool.
Well, and the best part is working in tattoo shops, like here in the States, we have a friend of ours owns a shop north of us. And him and another tattooer at his shop tattooed a couple. He tattooed the husband, she tattooed the wife. They both wanted basically the same tattoo. One does fine line bullshit tattooing, the other one does proper tattooing. But they both had to do something kind of in the middle. When
Mm,
you look at both these tattoos, they're both basically supposed to be kind of the same idea. Dude, they are tattooed so dramatically different. One is tattooed incredibly well, the other one is tattooed like shit. Now, two people came in, they're going home together. Now, how do you think they're going to think of those tattoos in
exactly.
6 weeks when the tattoos heal and they look at them and go, well, we obviously didn't get the same fucking tattoos. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's the difference between somebody who knows, even if you want to do fine line tattooing, you can do it, but you can do it well. You don't have to do it like bullshit, where half the line work's going to fall out if you're lucky, you know?
Mm.
And that's, I think, that's where it comes being a well-versed, well-rounded individual.
How long did it take for you to be able to say, well, now I know what I'm doing. Now I feel comfortable. And now I know what to expect when my tattoo heals.
I've been tattooing over 30 years. I still don't feel comfortable. I feel comfortable when I've seen a tattoo that's 15 years old and I look at it and I go, that's a good fucking tattoo.
Good.
Because realistically, there's a lot of nuances, whether it be people's skin how they hold certain color, how they hold certain lines, what machine I use. There's any number of things that can change a tattoo. I don't look at any tattoo. I'll look at a tattoo and be proud of it, obviously. If I finish the tattoo, I'll look at it and be like, that was a good tattoo, cool. But it's not until I see that tattoo 10 years down the line that I go, that's a great fucking tattoo. That is a good tattoo. I'm happy that I did that tattoo. That's really when it matters. I think in the beginning, when a tattoo's first done, you can look at it and go, that's a solid tattoo. But when you see it 10, 15 years down the line, then you can sit back and go, yeah, no, that's a fucking great tattoo. I don't ever feel comfortable, even to this day.
What do you think about the people like they are tattooing for 2, 3 years, if so, and they open their own shop and take apprentices?
Yeah, I got a problem with that. Again, I think that it's the blind leading the blind. I think the problem we're running into now is a lot of the younger generation of individuals that are getting into the business look at the way that things used to be done as being outdated and archaic. The fact that somebody should come in and apprentice and not get paid. The fact that the apprenticeship should last longer than 2 to 3 weeks, that they should be able to start tattooing within a couple of days. I think that they're missing out on the grand scheme of it. I think also that, if someone's got a good head on their shoulders and they want to open up a shop in 2 years, I guess more power to them. I can't hold that against them, but I think that they're doing a huge disservice to the business in general. I think part of the problem that we're dealing with in today's world with tattooing is there's too many tattooers, too many tattoo shops, too many suppliers. It's like before we used to be self-regulated. Before everybody used to know, no, you don't do that. That's the wrong way to do it. Do it like this. Now everybody goes, you can't tell me. I'm going to do it my way. And that's why you have shops opening up on top of one another. Back in the day, if somebody opened up a shop up the street, you had the decency to go into the shop and say, hey, man, just a heads up, I'm moving to the neighborhood, whatever. Now they'll open up across the street and not give a fuck. And if you're mad, that's on you. They don't give a shit. They don't
Oh,
realize that they have.
if you're mad, they're gonna call it gatekeeping.
Exactly. And they don't realize it's just bad business.
Yep.
It's just bad business. When someone who knows nothing about tattooing is bringing in three other ones, there's no line to hold. They look at it as like, well, I'm just going to work here for 3 months, and then I'm going to open my own place up. But meanwhile, you know nothing. You go off half cocked. I mean, there's a lot of shops around us that are owned by tattooers that have been tattooing for 2 years, and now they're fucked off and they're doing their own thing. And then they're bringing in more of their friends and they're teaching these people all the bad ways of doing things. And then that person's it just degrades the entire thing. It eventually just turns to shit. And people don't realize that.
I have this story that I like to tell in a completely different context, but a guy explaining about a red circle and a blue circle. And he puts on the screen and then he says, here's a red circle, here's a blue circle. Now, please tell me which one is bigger than the other. And then some people pull up their hands and other people pull up their hands for the red circle. And the guy says, okay, look again and tell me if they don't look exactly the same. Yeah, they look exactly the same. They are exactly the same. Some people said the red one looks bigger, the blue one looks bigger. And here's the thing, if I let you guys go out here telling that the red one looks bigger, in 5 generations, everybody's going to say that the red one is bigger. So if I come back and I say, no, it was bullshit, and both of them are the same, I'm going to be called crazy because it's going to spread so wrongly that nobody's going to believe anymore in the truth. It's exactly what you're saying. Like blind leading the blind, people not knowing what to do, teaching other people. And at some point gets to the point that everybody thinks, all right, the shit is actually the good.
Something I was taught a very long time ago. This is going back 30 years. If you want people to think that you're a great tattooer, you don't have to do great tattoos. You just need to tell them that you're a great tattooer. This is something I've often said. If you want to make a name for yourself, you tell everybody you're the best. And I did this with an artist here in the United States who's a piece of shit. He made a huge name for himself. Words kind of out on him, but whatever. But it's one of those things. It was something I was taught, and you just tell people you're the best. I mean, look at all the people that are teaching other people how to tattoo. It's like, they may be really good at what they do, but that doesn't mean you can teach that.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And the problem with tattooers, again, we're lazy. We're creatures of habit. Back in the day, I wanted to learn a certain style. I went out and got tattooed by that person. Now, you just take an online course or
Oh,
you take a weekend symposium and you just go and you spend $1,500, $2,000 to sit there and listen to somebody who probably shouldn't be teaching tell you what you need to do. And I don't necessarily think that's the best way to do it. I think that it really, you do need a little bit of like a real kind of explanation and actual showing somebody
mm,
that this is how it's done. You know what I mean? And it's not just literally watching somebody doing it, but being able to pick up the machine and be able to work right next to that person. You get that in an apprenticeship. And that's something I think that a lot of people take for granted because they just want to spend the money and learn how to do something. And again, I'm not saying that people can't learn that way. I'm not saying that people can't teach that way. But I don't think that the majority of the people that take it are going to get much out of it.
that was actually my next question. What is your intake in online courses and this whole, like social media? I'm gonna post now the tricks on how to tattoo. You don't need actually, don't even to do like a course or anything like this. You go on Instagram and watch YouTube videos.
I find it infuriating for a couple of reasons because I think the majority of the reason that people are doing it is for nothing more than likes,
Mm,
nothing more than followers. Maybe they're making a couple of bucks off the Instagram reels or whatever. I don't think they're doing it because they feel the need to educate people. Because I mean, realistically, that's fucking stupid. You know what I mean? If someone wants to learn, they should go out of their fucking way and learn. I think that things are made entirely too easy for people to get into this. Anybody who tells you that, oh my God, this business is impossible to get into, you obviously are not fucking trying. You're just
mm.
simply not fucking trying hard enough. If your town doesn't have someone that's willing to apprentice, go to the next town. Go to the town after that. Go someplace beyond that. Go to the next state. If you can't do that, then maybe now is not the right fucking time.
I see here a lot. People don't want to actually travel the distance. We teach, and then at the end, they need to go and find themselves an apprenticeship at the studio.
Right.
Oh, but this studio is like 20 kilometers away. I mean, I'm talking about Berlin, I'm talking about Germany, that you have the subway that drives you literally throughout the whole city. And people don't
Right.
want to drive 20 kilometers to be in a studio. Oh, no, it's impossible. I don't find it anything. What you're saying about going to the next city, going to the next state, you can forget this new generation. They are not
Oh yeah,
resilient
no.
enough.
The shop I apprenticed in was a 45-minute car drive
Oh,
every day.
see?
And
Yeah.
I did that. I mean, granted, the apprenticeship was short, but I worked there for 1 year. The shop I worked in was a half-hour drive. You know, when I wanted to move on and become a better tattooer, I was friends with Corey Kruger. He lived in New Hampshire. That's like a 3-hour drive from where I grew up. I moved to New Hampshire. My wife and I moved to New Hampshire to work with him because I wanted to be, he was a better tattooer than I was. He was a different type of artist. In my opinion, I think he was a better artist than I was. And I wanted to learn from him. So I up and fucking moved. It wasn't to own my own shop. I just wanted to be and learn from that individual. And I think that was a really important thing, you know. And I think that most people don't give that enough. I think when you up and move somewhere, you're showing everybody that you are that much more committed than the
Yeah.
average person.
Definitely. I had to hear somebody that quit the apprenticeship. He was talented, but he quit it because he needed to drive every day half an hour with the subway that literally goes from his door to the door of the studio. And he was not having clients. He could tattoo people,
Right.
but he was not moving to find people to tattoo. And I told him, look, you're going to need to find clients for yourself or friends so you can tattoo. And the other days he was like, oh, I don't see the point in coming to the studio if I'm not tattooing. I was like, all right,
Yeah, so that makes no sense. But the
okay,
thing
cool.
is, you're not going to take, like, we have guys here that that's what they do. They're walk-in artists. You know what I mean? If they don't have an appointment, they're still here. And even if they may not be able to do the tattoo that comes in that day, you make the appointment for tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you have to be there in order to meet these people and to say, yeah, I can tattoo you in an hour, or I can't do it today. Leave a deposit, come in tomorrow.
And as an apprentice, if you're not tattooing, you're watching the other people tattooing and you are at the studio and you're showing actually that you want. This for
Right.
me, how an apprentice should be. It should be the first one to arrive at the studio and the last one to leave.
Yep.
Simply to show
Yep.
like, really, I'm here. I want that.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
like, I want this so badly. This is what I'm willing to do. And again,
exactly.
like you said before, most people don't give it that much credit and they look at it from the perspective of, well, if I'm going to make you money, Why do I have to be the one to come in early? Why do I have to be the one to clean the floors? Why do I have to be the one to make sure that the garbages are taken out? They look at it as, well, we're all making money. I'm making you money, but you should be doing that. And again, it's one of those situations where it's like, I think as a shop owner, there are certain things that you should do. I hired a manager to do the majority of the stuff that I don't want to do because I want to be able to tattoo. I want to be able to create art. So in order to make my life easier and not ignore all the things that need to be done, I hired a manager for that and I pay her for that. Where the other guys, they could say, well, you're not doing it. I'm like, yeah, I'm not, because I hired her to do it. That's her job. You know what I mean? I've never apprenticed anybody and I never will apprentice anybody. There's enough tattooers in this thing. I don't have the wherewithal to even think about wanting to apprentice anybody. So for me, it's like, it's better for me to just hire somebody as opposed to get free help, because I don't think that that's really the smartest way to do it either. I think that an apprentice has certain responsibilities in the shop, but by the same token, his main job is there to learn.
Exactly. Talking about now tattooing, long is the longest tattoo sessions that you do?
I don't, most of the sessions nowadays are between 3 and 5 hours. I tattoo relatively fast. So what I can get done in 3 to 5 hours is a lot more than most people will get done. The longest sessions I think I've ever done were like 9 hours. And I've done a couple of back-to-back days on certain people, but I don't particularly care to do that. If someone's traveling from out of state and they're here for one and done, then I'll take the time to do just that. I'll knock out the tattoo. But if I can get those people to come back, I would prefer that because I could take more time. Also, the older I'm getting, I'm going to be 57 in a couple of months. I have a harder time with my focusing on something for really long periods of time. I prefer to break things up into smaller sessions.
And how do you prepare yourself? I mean, 57, I'm 42, and I can feel my back. I can feel my eyes. I can feel everything hurting, everything
I
giving
started,
away.
I can barely see the screen right now. Like I have to wear readers now. But yeah, I think we just get older. And luckily, I've not had problems with my hands. My back is bad, my shoulders, my hip. You're just getting older. I mean, you deal with it. Like that's all I got to say. You just fucking deal with it. Like you have. If I want to continue to do this, then I have to. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think that you should take care of yourself. The one thing I tell anybody is, health wise, you do need to take care of yourself. And I'll be the first one to say this: do as I say, not as I do, because I am far from the healthiest
Oh,
individual.
but you told me that you were at the gym before the
Yeah,
meeting
I mean,
now,
I
so
try
you
to do
see, you
certain
take care.
things, but it's only a little bit. Like, I mean, I should be. Like I tell people to, if you're heavy, lose the weight. If you've got bad habits, drop the bad habits. I don't do any of that. So, like I said, do as I say, not as I do. So, because I'm a testament to all the bad things that can happen here, and I'm fortunate, very lucky that it could be a lot worse, and it's not.
What would be something that you would say if you could go back and talk to yourself at the beginning of your career? What would be something that you definitely tell yourself?
I think two things. One would be getting healthy. Two would be at a younger age, I wish I had moved to a place like Europe, like maybe Italy or a foreign country, in a sense to learn a different cultural side of the business. You know what I mean? I think that in the United States we're very much like into like the old school way of doing things, the old school American traditional way of doing things, to the point where I think it could be at a fault. I remember the first time I met Philip Liu in Switzerland at a convention that I had done back in 97, I think it was, and being blown away by his mentality, his persona, and just having this overall, like, you know, just whimsical feel. I am an angry human being. I get offended by things. I get angry at certain tattooers. I hate certain tattooers. I'm a hot-headed New York Italian. And I think that has helped me in a lot of ways. It's also hindered me in a lot of ways. There are people that I would have liked to get to know that will probably have nothing to do with me because they've heard me in a bar at a convention at 2 o'clock in the morning, screaming and hollering and being an asshole. So I think maybe that would be, I think just seeing a different side of the culture of tattooing and not being just so East Coast New York, East Coast style tattooer, because I think that we have a certain attitude in the Northeast that most other parts of the country don't have, and other parts of the world are definitely lacking.
It's funny. It's funny you're saying this because I see a lot of people here exactly doing the opposite that you're telling. Everybody, at least Germany, anyways, the Germans, they love the US. The dream is to actually go to work in the US, to tattoo in the US. And the majority of them, it's like New York. Because if you can
I
make it
think
in New York, you can make it anywhere.
so. It's funny. I think that what we're seeing now is a lot of people from Italy, from Germany, from the UK. They're all moving to United States. It took longer for the slowness to hit New York, to hit the States than it did Europe, than it did most of the other parts of the world. But now it's starting to happen. You do have a lot of people that are coming to the United States, but I think that everything is spread a lot thinner. And agreed, if you can make it in those places, you can make it anywhere. But sometimes it's nice to be able to sit back and just be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to go into my little studio with the three guys I work with, and we're going to hang around all day, and we're going to talk, and maybe we tattoo, maybe we don't tattoo. Just a little bit more of a lighthearted approach to things. Where if I'm at the shop, I'm tattooing. If I'm not, I want to go home or I want to do something else.
So
And that's not a good way to think.
you come there and you hang around. You paint also, no?
Try
You
to,
still
yes,
painting.
yes. Not as much as I used to. I need to start getting more into it. The iPad fucked everything up
You work with an
because
iPad.
a lot, a
Yeah.
lot, for
Procreate.
probably the last 2.5 years, 2.5, 3 years, because it's so convenient. Where now it's like, I want to get back into drawing. I want to get with paper, painting on paper. I need to get away from this and more into physical paper again.
It makes life so easy. It's so easy to change when the clients want things and like the client doesn't like a color. It's just
Yeah,
click
tap.
away, exactly, a tap away and it
Exactly.
can change. But I don't know, shading, for example, I cannot do in a Procreate. I
Yeah.
I don't know any brushes that would work decently to do a shading.
Most of the flash, because we do a lot of flash events here. So every time we do a flash event, we usually draw flash for it. And I use Procreate for most of the flash that I've produced over the last probably 3 years, I think it's been. And I've gotten used to it, and I can make it look like a colored pencil piece. It's just more refined. Like there's certain brushes that you can use that'll look like a micron pen, where
Mm.
it looks like a proper line on paper. I use it's called the Coil shading brush, which looks just like colored pencil. I like that. I like it a lot, and it's actually helped me in tattooing in a sense, because when I design Flash, I try to simplify it. So not that we can do the Flash faster, but that it's more tattooable. Like if I were left to my own devices, my stuff is going to have a lot more going on, a lot more shading, a lot more depth, a lot more color. But when I do Flash, I try to think of like, dark to light as opposed to dark to light, and
Mm.
meet in the middle with white. I try to do something where it's like, it's a little bit more like an old school tattoo, but not. It's definitely like something I do. You know what I mean? So I think it just depends on the thing. So from that perspective, I like Procreate for that. Also, I like to be able to print from that, because then I can just put it on a thumb drive, go to the printer,
Oh,
pick
yeah.
up my flash and print it. Where otherwise I have to put it on board, and then I have to make line drawings and scan it, and then it's just a pain in the ass. But having said that, I'm hoping within this week to start a new set of flash on paper,
Okay.
and start creating some new flash on paper.
Tell me, how is Joe Capobianco the guy, not the tattooist? I know that you like the hot rods a lot.
I own an old 1970 Cadillac Coupe de Ville, and it's sitting under a tarp on the side of my building here. I do enjoy that stuff. I don't use it enough. I don't get out enough. So I don't do nearly enough as far as with that. Most of my time lately has been doing the podcast and traveling, because all of my friends are all over the world. I was in California 6 weeks ago. Jack Rudy passed away. I was making a plan to go out there and talk to him and a bunch of other people. 5 days before he passed away, they had a big memorial for him. So I went out to California for that. So I spent 8 days in California just traveling the Southern California. I went to see Nico, London, Corey Miller, Eric Inklin, like just see all these old guys that I haven't seen in years. So more of my time now is about traveling and seeing friends and connecting, but maybe do some tattooing. But it's more about reconnecting with friends because the one thing I've seen as the older I get is we ain't here forever, man. So try to enjoy the time with our friends as much as you can, you know.
True, man. True words. Before we finish, if you could change one thing in the tattoo industry or the tattoo scene, whatever you want to call it, what would it be and why?
I guess, you know, by making the business smaller, it takes away from the popularity. I think if the business were less popular, it would be a smaller business. And I think that a lot of the things that I find bad about the business, that I find disagreeable about the business is because of how fast and how large the business has gotten. I wish that we as a whole, as a trade, knew enough to keep our fucking mouths shut. And this comes from somebody who was on television. And I know that a lot of people
True,
blame it
yeah.
on TV, and they're not entirely wrong. Um, but I think I wish that if we were going to go on TV, I wish it was us that was more involved in what happened on television, that we had more of a say on what was going on
I
with the
understand that.
business and a little bit more control over how big and how fast it happened. Again, there's nobody to blame for most of the bad things in this business that have happened other than us. We blame ourselves. And I say that wholeheartedly for myself as well. Like I said, I did the television shows. I felt it would be better to be me than somebody else. And maybe that was an egotistical way of thinking, but it's honestly what made me decide to take the job on the television show when I did it, because I felt that there were worse people to represent the business. What I didn't realize at that time was it doesn't matter who was going to be on TV. TV was going to have its way with us no matter what. And the problem with that comes from more people get into it, more people are inspired by it, more people get tattooed, more tattoo artists bring in more other tattoo artists, more shops open up, more suppliers, blah, 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 blah. And before you know it, now we're here where we are, where we're a bloated, oversaturated business. So if I say anything, I'd say I wish we had more control and we knew to pump the brakes
Mhm.
back in, 2009, as opposed to just fucking floor to the pedal to the metal, and let's see where we end up.
What do you think about the conventions nowadays? I don't know how the conventions changed there in the US, but in Europe, you have no curation anymore. It's the fullest, the best, and anybody can enter the convention.
That's the problem. It's too big. Promoters went from putting on great conventions with great tattooers, good entertainment, great venues, great cities to do it in, to, okay, instead of making our money on the front door, now we're going to make our money on the booths. Now, how do you make your money on the booths? Well, you go from doing 125 booths to 250 booths. 250 booths becomes 500 booths. 500 booths become 1,000 booths. And now you have shows that have 1,000, 1,500 booths. The promoter has made money even before the doors have opened.
Yep.
So if they get nobody through the door, they don't even care. They've already made their money.
I think this is
That's the
exactly.
problem.
I went to a convention a couple of weeks ago, and this was exactly, it was 690 tattooists or 690 stands. Yeah. Every stand with at least two tattooists, and there was nobody.
Exactly. That's my problem with that kind of situation. And again, part of that problem is, and again, this is where we have an issue with us. If you know right now that the convention was bad, there's a good chance that the next convention is going to be just as bad.
Mhm.
So instead of not putting on that convention, what happens? Somebody decides to put on two conventions. I mean, in the United States, every weekend, there's anywhere between 3 to 7 tattoo conventions just here in the United States,
It's
every
crazy.
weekend.
It's crazy.
Europe, and if you include Europe, you could be looking at 7 to 10 conventions every weekend. Again, this is all run by us. You know what I mean? Or if it's not run by us, it might be run by some corporation or somebody who has nothing to do with tattooing,
It's
but
even
every
worse.
tattooer wants to be part of it.
It's
But
even
they
worse.
they still support it.
If there's not tattooists running the convention, then the convention is going to be it's going to be even less for the tattooers. It's going to be way more
Yeah.
for the business, for the money, and that's it. For example, convention in Berlin. It's the oldest one in Europe. Used to be one of the most important. After London now stopped, Berlin should be again one of the main
The
points.
biggest one.
Yeah. What did the guy do here? He pull up the prices for the stands at the convention, and that's it.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
that's part of the problem is because it's gotten too big. It's too much. And now instead of having it in a small hotel, now you do it at a convention center. It's all labor union. It's all unionized. So it's like, yeah, if you need to bring a chair in, you have to pay them to bring the chair in. Oh, you need a table? That costs X amount of
yeah.
dollars. These are all things that back in the day, conventions, you got chairs, you got booths, you got your tables. Now, if some of these conventions, they charge you for every little thing and they take the heart and soul out of it. And it's just simply, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. You know, I don't do as many conventions as I used to. I try to now. I'm trying to get back into it just to see new people and see my old friends. But for the most part, I cut way back on conventions. But I'm going to start a handful of new ones.
When was the last time that I've been to Europe?
I did Rome 2 years ago, and then I did the big London convention. Not the last one, the one before. I
Okay.
did the big London convention, which was the one that was kind of replacing the
Yeah.
London convention. And there was great artists, not a very good turnout. I went and spent some time with Lal Hardy. I spent a few days after the convention with Lal Hardy in London and had a really great time. That was the last time I was in Europe, was in London. I want to go back probably. I doubt it'll happen this year, probably early next year. I'll go out there. Again, I was supposed to be in Venice last week, but it's too expensive. When I did Rome, I did 2 tattoos. Nobody was getting tattooed. Unless you were local, a
Yeah.
lot of local tattooers were busy because they're probably tattooing for nothing. If I'm coming to Italy, I need to charge money. I can't do it for nothing. A lot of people just didn't have the money, you know?
Italy, Spain, Portugal are countries that unfortunately they are completely broken. Even Germany, I can feel here in Berlin. Berlin has over 900 tattoo studios. And what they're doing now is instead of putting up the quality, it's decreasing the prices.
Yeah, and that's the problem. It's like if you don't hold the bar at a certain point. I mean, granted, I don't. I mean, I charge fair money. Like, what I charge is what I charge. It's nothing compared to what other people in this country charge. Chances are they do one day, they make in what I make in a week.
Yeah,
Some tattooers. And now I don't have a problem with that. If you want to do that, fine. Keep it to yourself. You don't need to announce that this is what everybody should charge. I think that it's unrealistic and I don't think it's sustainable. And I think that's part of the problem. It's like, if you charge this, just between you and your client, you know what I mean? But when you start holding seminars and workshops and you tell everybody, no, you need to charge $3,000 a session. Like, who are you to tell people that don't know anything what they should be charging? You find your line and that's what you stick to. I think that's part of the problem is like everybody's all over the place and I don't know. It's crazy. I think that's too much. It's just too much, you know.
you talk about going to Rome and not having tattoos. The Gods of Ink convention in Frankfurt with amazing names, and people
Yeah.
were sitting there not tattooing. You have people going from all over the world. You have
The
the craziest names in the scene and sitting there chilling.
Years ago, I'm not going to mention the two shows that they were. They're very big shows. I'm not going to say which they were because I don't want to get blackballed. But I worked, but most of the people that came up to the show to the booth had 250 euro. I had someone would come up and they'd say, "How much for this?" 500 euro. No, 200. No, I fucking make the prices, not you. And that happened a lot. And they would leave me and they'd go across the way and they would get tattooed over there. At the end of the weekend, I walk up to the guy and I'm like, "Hey, did you tattoo the last?" "Yeah, yeah, yeah." "What did you charge him?" He goes, "Oh, he only had 200 euro." You did that tattoo for 200 euro. Like, dude, it took you 4 hours. That's crazy. That's the thing where it's like, okay, now you're just giving away work. It's like,
Exactly.
and everybody's excuse was, well, I need to make the money. I'm like, well, then you shouldn't have come to Europe. You should have stayed home because that makes everybody look bad. Because now it's like, oh, well, you're just going to do it cheaper. Why do I go to him? I'll go to him.
Exactly.
That's the same thing that happens in tattoo shops that piss people off,
Exactly.
But that was where I saw things starting to change before COVID. where things were definitely turning for the worst. And I think we're just going to see it get worse and worse and worse now.
Oh yeah, I see here studios opening and closing. It's like every week somebody comes here and wants to cover up a tattoo or something like this, and you look,
Yeah.
it's horrible shit, and you ask, "Where did you do this?" Then it's a name that you never heard before, and then you go to
Yeah.
Google, and it's like permanently closed. It's like, okay, this one
Wow.
went really quick.
Now they're probably working out of their house. They
Yeah,
work
yeah,
underground.
probably private
Yeah,
studio
exactly.
under the
A private
table.
studio is a big thing. I understand private studios to a degree. I think people who've been tattooing for like a year, 2 years, I think they do themselves a disservice by not working amongst
Yeah,
other tattooers.
definitely.
Because I think the private studio has a mentality as well where it's like, I come in, I do my appointment, I leave. And then you have some people there at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, some people at 8 o'clock in the morning, some people at 8 o'clock at night. So nobody works amongst one another. So you don't really get to know anybody. You don't get to bounce ideas off of each
Oh,
other.
these private studios, and you have the private studios, there's literally somebody in their kitchen tattooing.
Yeah,
It's like I tattoo in my
it's out of
kitchen.
their house.
Yeah.
Out of their house. Yeah, that's not a good thing.
It's another level of bad things. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So
Man, one last question for you. If you wouldn't be tattooing, what would you be doing?
at 12 years old, I worked in my uncle's restaurant, and my father was a chef. My mother was a waitress. My brother was a chef for a time. I'd like to think I'd still be an artist, but if not, I'd probably end up working in a restaurant because that's what I
Okay.
know. I know how to cook, do all that stuff, and I enjoy it. I love that. I love that business. So I'm glad I'm not because it's a very difficult, very hard on your body kind of business. But if it weren't for art, I would probably be doing that. So.
It's crazy. It's crazy to imagine Joe Capobianco, the chef. But
Well, if you come to my house, I'm going to cook for you.
I was I was smiling the whole day today. Like I woke up and my wife was like, "Yeah, I know you're gonna talk to Joe Capobianco today. I know."
Well, I appreciate you asking, giving me the time. So thank you. I appreciate that, man. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, man. Have a nice one
Have a
there.
good one.
Bye
You
bye.
too. Take care. Bye.
Bye.